Hello everyone, this will be my first video in RaceRoom. This is a sim I never bothered with much for a couple of reasons. Firstly, it was a bit of a dog to get working in VR properly, and that hasn't changed. But the main reason was, and this is just my opinion only, was that the driving physics were pretty crap. But a few weeks ago they released their much touted force feedback physics upgrade, which in my humble view has now made RaceRoom a must-have addition to your sim racing setup. I'll speak more about that in a moment, but for the time being, back to the race. This is at Zandvoort in the Netherlands on the Grand Prix variation. I qualified in 6th position of 20 cars, and I'm driving a McLaren MP4 12C GT3. As mentioned, I started in 6th position and I'm currently in 6th position. So as mentioned, this is my first race. I've barely touched it, but there's a couple of things I can tell you that, to me at least, are downsides straight away. Maybe there is, but I haven't found it yet. But the sound doesn't have a breakdown of the different elements. Or it does, but it appears to be pretty limited. I can hear the engine okay, and perhaps it's in special effects. I haven't actually properly checked, but I can barely hear any tyre screeching, which doesn't help. If it's part of special effects, then that's possibly going to be a little problem, in that I can hear the other special effects, like collisions and cutting corners and things, no problem. If you can't hear the tyre screeching properly, it's a bit of a problem, in that whilst they've upgraded the physics and it feels heaps better, you can't really feel the sliding like you can in ACC or even iRacing. I'd argue that ACC and iRacing are the two very best when it comes to feeling sliding and skidding. Anyway, as you can see in the course of the last lap, I've picked up 2 spots, so I'm now up into 4th. Another downside to RaceRoom for me, and this is purely from the perspective of a guy who makes racing videos out of his races, there's no option in the replay to bring up HUD information on the screen, like leaderboards, etc. But just getting back to the physics thing again, if I could come up with a word that would describe how it feels to me, I'd say a little rubbery, which is probably the way I would describe Gran Turismo Sport actually, after having driven a number of different sims now. Once I know all the driving sims that I own really well, I'm going to make a video rating them, and I'll do a breakdown of the different pros and cons when I do it. But as I said here with RaceRoom, I'd put it on par with GT Sport, not quite Project Cars 2 or Automobilista 2, but if I had to rate them when it comes to physics above that level, I would say Assetto Corsa, then Assetto Corsa Competizione, and iRacing being the very best. So anyway, at the moment, still plodding along in 4th, hoping to take this guy pretty soon to grab 3rd. There's definitely a couple of things I do like about RaceRoom though. In your assists setup, you have 3 options: novice, amateur, and one they call Get Real, which I really liked. It basically translates as no assists whatsoever. It does still leave the option open though for adding some assists that you might like. For example, I use ABS braking. Not something I would actually consider an assist, as it's something that is commonplace and exists in the real world. But another feature that RaceRoom has that I really like is a thing they called Adaptive AI. It's a very user-friendly yet precise tool for matching your skill level against those of your opponents. The skill level varies from skill level 80 to 120. Me being the type of person who finds it much more rewarding to win when it's hard rather than when it's easy, I set this race at 105%. I'd argue that at this time that seems about right for me, as I've done the last couple of laps without gaining a place or without losing a place. More pros and cons to RaceRoom. On the pro side, there's a pretty wide selection of cars and tracks. On the downside, like iRacing, you have to buy them. But again, on the upside, they're nowhere near as expensive as iRacing. For example, and I can't remember precisely, but I know that a track on iRacing will set you back about $20, whereas from memory I think this track was around $8 or $9 on RaceRoom, and whilst a car will cost you around $15 Australian on iRacing, it's only about $5 or $6 on RaceRoom, so it's pretty good value. Anyway, just coming around onto the home straight again, and I'm still in 4th place, but I think I'm closer to 3rd place than I have been thus far, so I'm getting there. And whilst I mentioned before that I thought a downside of the replay was not being able to bring up HUD information, as you can see here, I think that the camera options are pretty good, and the TV coverage cameras seem to be at pretty good distances by default, and I haven't mucked around with it yet, but I see it seems to have a fairly extensive options range for keyframing and camera angles and distances to create your own custom replays. But again, in my mind, that just strengthens my argument for why would you not have these other options like HUD displays. Right, so I've finally got myself into a position where I can make a play for 3rd place. So a drag race now down the home stretch. He's got the better of it at the moment. I finally get there, so up into 3rd now. So while we're waiting for me to try and catch these guys in front of me, I thought I'd mention that pretty shortly I'm thinking about making a video of giving you guys a close-up tour of my sim rig. I'll show you some of the different equipment that I've purchased and reasons why I chose the stuff that I chose. Put up a bit of an inventory on what I spent. Point out some areas where I think you can save some money, and hopefully act as a bit of a guide for guys like my long-time subscriber Chu, who left a comment on one of my videos recently that he was in the process of saving up his money for a sim rig. So slowly but surely I'm getting closer to these guys. Got them well in my sights now. I mentioned in a previous video that this track, Zandvoort, is going to host the Dutch Grand Prix for the first time in many years. That will happen this September, so only a couple of months away. So that chicane has given me a great opportunity to get up with these guys again. Right with them, but not close enough to try and effect an overtake on that corner. Get it into a pretty bad slide there. I recover it, but lose ground on them. I've noticed on RaceRoom, probably more than any other sim, that the field doesn't seem to spread out too much. There's always guys behind you ready to pounce. Get it into another pretty bad slide there. Not that you could hear the tyres that much. Same thing again on that corner, so not driving very well at the moment. And of course that's just allowing those guys in front of me to get further and further ahead. Round the last bend onto the home straight to begin the final lap. Anyway, I haven't lost sight of those two guys in front of me, so it's not over yet. now come around onto the straight to begin the final lap, and those guys have still got some distance on me, so it's not looking very promising. Oh, and for the only time in the race, I mess up the chicane. On the final lap, of course. I get it into another slide, and by some miracle, I haven't actually surrendered a position. I've managed to hang on to third. And there I've just crossed the line in third place. So not too bad, I'm pretty happy with that. On a sim that I haven't got used to yet, started out in 6th position, lost a place right near the beginning of the race, so clawed my way from 7th back up to 3rd. Not too bad. Thanks for watching, everyone.